Yeah. Before I explain what is the motion burden of THBT motion, you need to understand certain things. In a parliamentary debate, one of the most common form of motions are like can be classified into three or four types: A, value judgment motion; B, policy motion; C, regrets motion, and etc. etc. They come under actor motion. They come under a different segments. Today we are going to flesh out how this value judgment motion, that THBT motions, looks like. Like one of the most common motion types is THBT, which stands for like this house believes that. What does this mean? THBT motion is different from policy debates or like because it's mainly about judging an idea or like belief or some sort of value or viewpoint, right? That means this debate, when we talk about this entire motion of like PHBT motion is focused on not focused on some sort of like creating law or building a system like policy motions or like actor motions, right? That means what instead this entire debate when we talk about like PHBT motion is like asking the adjudicator that is the belief or convincing the adjudicator is this belief something society should agree with or not. That means like the goal of both the sides, like government opposition, is to convince the audience which side of the belief is more justified, right? That means what makes THBT motion different? Simple. Just on the metrics, you can simply note it down somewhere. When you flesh out a THBT, what are the metrics you should think about? Ideas, principles, like attitude towards the society, values or social beliefs, and etc. Right? That means you are debating like whether a certain way of thinking is more morally correct, socially beneficial to the stakeholders, practical or harmful or unfair or unrealistic, right? Before jumping to the fleshing out of the motion, I want to explain a term called stakeholders. What does this term stakeholder mean? When we discuss about a motion, the motion revolves around the people who are getting directly impacted by the motion being effective or not, right? That means if I go ahead and talk about this house believes that social media does more harm than good, the primary stakeholders of the motion is like the people who are getting directly affected. The children, the teenagers, the consumers of this social media and etc. are the stakeholders. That means when I go ahead and judge this motion is simply I have to tell whether these people, these stakeholders, the ones, the consumers of the media, is this social media more harmful for them or good for them, right? Let's just flesh out this motion. This house believes that social media does more harm than good. Just understand, this motion is not asking that how will we implement or something we have to prove the mechanism of. Simply, we are asking that should we agree that social media is doing more harm than good or not, or it is doing more good than harm? Simple thing. So, what is the main aim of this motion or the debate lies around? Right. The aim of the debate is to change how the adjudicator, who is an ignorant voter, average ignorant voter, is like average intelligent voter, how the adjudicator thinks about the idea. Right. That means you, as the debater from the gov side or the op side, you are trying to shape the adjudicator's understanding or the judgment. Like what was assuming, considering first side, like gov side, the government side is supporting the motion, obviously. Now, what do have to government do in this PHBT motions? Right. The government side has to support the motion. Their role is to prove why the belief of that social media is doing more harm than good is right. That means why it is making sense that social media is doing good. It's doing harm over any good. And so, is society being getting benefited from accepting the fact that yeah, it is doing more harm than good, and etc. The government must make the adjudicator feel that yes, this is the reasonable and justified belief that social media is doing more harm than good. This justification you or the reasoning you do through your arguments in the very simple term, right? That means what is the government's burden firstly in THBT motion? Define the and explain the belief clearly that how does social media looks like in the very first place, how in the current scenario it is affecting the people in general, right? You can simply start as the government that in the motion like THBT, social media does more harm than good. You can simply start with, yeah, the current scenario of social media is that people's screen time, teenagers and the youth are spending more time on social media, consuming it rather than focusing on their priorities. That means it's a one-sided benefit from these platforms, social media platforms, getting money out of this, uh, out of their applications or platforms through these consumers. These consumers spend their valuable time, endless amounts of hours of work, etc., etc. Just explain the believe clearly that, right? Because the first job of government is bringing clarity of the idea. They must explain what exactly the motion means, what idea is being debated in the very first place, how they want the audience to understand the entire belief. Probably the adjudicator should have an idea about by now what this entire understand or belief is exactly, right? I'm bringing another simple example. This house believes that money cannot buy happiness. Government should simply explain what happiness is. B, what kind of money they are referring to. C, whether they are discussing long term fulfillment or temporary pleasure. Without proper framing, the adjudicator is confused in the very first place. You need to understand what are the keywords of the motion, right? That means what kind of happiness that money cannot buy, what kind of money you are actually talking about, right? And then simply go ahead and explain why the belief is correct. That means government must also justify why the belief is correct in the very first place. That means explaining the logic or the moral reasoning or the social reality or the practical reality behind the belief in the very first place. That means the adjudicator should understand now the why this idea is existing and why people should support it in the very first place. Right. That means when I go ahead and talk about this simple motion that THBT money cannot buy happiness, I have to explain through a logic that, yeah, money cannot fulfill the emotional happiness that one can get through like having someone by your side and etc. etc. That means I have to show some positive impacts as well, right? That means from the gov side, while proving my idea to the adjudicator. That means the government is simply needing to like prove that accepting this belief is creating more benefit. How this means these benefits, how do you classify or how do you make these benefits out of the motion by reading just simply the motion, right? That means these benefits can be emotional, these benefits can be social, economic, moral, educational, practical. In any terms, the stakeholders are being benefited. That means questions that government should answer to the adjudicator is simple. A, how does the society improve? B, who is getting benefited out of these idea being clarified? C, why is the better than the alternative that is being like social media is not doing good than harm, etc., etc. Right? Try to. This is entirely till your in your first speech or like second half speech. Then what happens when your others like your second speaker comes? Simply relatable examples bring into the debate. That means examples are like very important for THBT debates. Not as in, like your entire speech is carrying 10 examples. That is not making the adjudicator score your speech as a good speech. Right? Try to bring one example, very relevant example into the debate, and trust me, it will get you if you explain it through mechanism and etc. Good logic, it will be credited. That means the adjudicator or the ones who are seeing the debate is understanding the argument better when they're connected to more like real life examples or like extreme relatable examples like schools, friendships, social media, family, celebrities, or in everyday life or current, even like current geopolitics and etc. Good examples will make the belief feel real and up to certain extent believable. That means it's making your case more heavier. Right. That means show why the belief matters more on your side of the paradigm. That means why the discussion is more important, why the society should care about social media doing more harm to the people than good, any good, right? That means what happens if people ignore this issue. That means people are still spending time on social media rather than focusing on their lives. Right. This is giving emotional, practical weight to the debate in the very first place. So, in summing up, like government's case entirely, that means this belief is true, reasonable, and beneficial, and worth accepting. This is the entire thing, one liner that you should keep in mind as government while dealing with THBT motions. Any doubt till here, like for THBT motions, from the Gov POV, I will explain the upside as well. So, just any doubts? Understanding your like what are the key metrics you should keep in mind about while dealing with. Okay, seeing none, I'll proceed. Let me just consider some examples, right? Because without examples, this thing is null and void. Uh, just understand the motion. This house believes that social media does more harm than good and etc. Right? When you go ahead and flesh out this motion, what do you understand? Simple. You just government could argue that yeah, social media is increasing insecurity and comparison in like real life. That means seeing seeing a couple influencers content, they are being more insecure. A comparison comes. That means it's somewhere or the other, it's affecting the mental health. That means it's damaging kind of mental health. That means people are getting addicted to validation more now. Like yeah, whatever you're seeing on the social media is more relevant. That means it's you have to get yourself validated through social media likes or comments or etc. now. That means fake news are being spread more rapidly. Real life relationships are becoming weaker. That means now this point, this argument that real life relations becoming more weaker, real life becoming weaker, you can simply bring the example that in the same house, a family is staying, mother, father, and kid. The kid is spending more time on the social media or like talking with the social media friends more than they are actually doing with their own parents. That means the real life relations are becoming weaker. This entire analysis from government side is concluding to society is becoming worse when social media is dominating the human interaction. So my primary metrics of this entire argument is social human interaction, which is being limited through like uh, social media. So this was your entire gov idea how to deal with PHPT motions. When a motion, whatever is written, I will just read out what is written on the screen. When a motion starts with PHPT first time. Yeah, same thing. I told the same thing. Yeah. Let me just quickly explain opposition side. Till there, any doubt, you are free to ask. No, seeing none, I got a confirmation. Proceeding with the opposition side, what opposition burden is actually in this motion, right? Opposition burden is entirely different from what government did in the very first place. If now opposition has to challenge the logic behind the beliefs. That means opposition should question whether the government's reasoning is actually making sense or anything, whether their assumptions are realistic or not, whether the belief is too simplistic or not. That means if government is saying social media is destroying communication, the opposition can respond. Social media is also helping people to stay connected across countries and communities. That means you can simply, the opposition can come and break this government's claim that social media is destroying communication by saying that, yeah, people are being more stigmatized when they express their emotions or expectations on to in real life to people. People have this constant fear of being judged in real life and they share their feelings with someone. Social media is giving a validation to those people. They are receiving some sort of like supportive community in the very first shared community over social media, right? B, what you have to do as the opposition simply show some negative consequences of the belief. That means opposition must explain that what harms happen if the society is accepting the belief. What problems is government ignoring while pushing this entire belief now, and why the belief may create unfair outcomes in the status quo. Status quo is basically the present scenario. Thirdly, what you have to do is provide alternative perspectives. That means, what does alternative perspective means? It's not very necessary you put alternative, you bring alternative perspectives in like in a THPT motion, but still is better. Like you are lag some sort of XYZ motion is coming, which is very hard to bring new arguments. You come ahead and give alternative perspectives because actually bringing new arguments is very difficult now because you can't think of anything. Your brain has gone blank. What you do is bringing alternative perspectives and you mask it in some such a way that it becomes more value judgment motion over like bringing any sort of like alternative perspective. That means good opposition. Being a good opposition, you do not only attack the case, you also show another way to understand the issue or another value system or another priority. That means, let me just give you an example of this. That means this house believes that academic success is more important than happiness. Government will simply come and say that success is creating opportunities and stabilities. That is why academic success is better, more important. Opposition simply come and say that happiness and mental health are the foundation of a meaningful life. That means you have to keep your mental health better to have a better life rather than focusing on academic life. Right. That means point out you have to as the opposition now what we get out of this, you have to point out the contradictions. What are these contradictions? Opposition should identify weak assumptions or like some sort of like unrealistic examples that the government has brought into the debate, or like the hypocrisy that is like knifing the simple term. Hypocrisy is not very something very big term in a debate. It's simply you can call it like probably very knifing their own case. You must have heard people, adjudicators saying that you must have knifed your case. Simply knifing means you are going saying some argument which is not supporting your belief. That means it's not unsupportive towards your own belief that you are trying to prove, right? You can show the inconsistencies in your government's argument that they have tried to bring for proving the belief. Now, why do you have to be more unconvincing towards the adjudicator? Because now, as the opposition, you have to show why the society is becoming worse if people are accepting this belief. B, by rejecting it, it's creating a better outcome. Now, you don't have to come with new logical ways to prove that the motion is good or bad. You just prove the other side wrong by your own logic and reasoning. A simple one-liner, this entire opposition. How do I tell? This belief is flawed and harmful, or like less beneficial than the alternative that is proposed by the government. Simple. Let's quickly compare what entirely government and opposition sides are. Government is supporting the belief while opposition is rejecting the belief. Government is explaining why the belief is correct. Opposition is explaining why the belief is flawed. Government is showing positive consequences. The opposition is showing negative consequences. The government is making the idea more convincing. The opposition is simply challenging the idea. The government is proving the social benefits. The opposition is simply proving society is suffering. That's it. So this entire thing is revolving around the value judgment motions, revolving around the society or the stakeholders being directly affected by the motion. Again, stakeholders is something very important that you have to stick throughout your debate in any motion. Burden, who is getting directly being affected by the motion being more relevant or not, right? So what are the things you have to remember? A, that THBT debates are not policy debates. That means you do not need to bring a detailed implementation or like laws which are you have to prove into the parliament, like mechanisms which are very secondary. The most important thing which you have to do in like THBT motions is simple. You have to give better reasoning for your belief, better like value or impact. You have to simple words. In fact, dikhao, you will simply win over like THBT motions. Now, how do you go ahead and build a good THBT argument? There are certain metrics. There are four metrics for like building a good argument for THBT motion. A, you have to claim. That means what are you saying that yeah, this house believes that social fame is not worth pursuing. Claim is fame is destroying personal privacy in the very first place. That is my first argument. B, reasoning. Why is it true? That means the reasoning behind this that famous people are constantly facing public judgment and pressure. Right. C is impact. That why does it matter? Impact is this fame and thing is creating some sort of like, this being facing public judgment and pressure is creating some sort of like anxiety or like some sort of like emotional stress or like loss of individuality in the very first place for the stakeholder of the motion. That is like some famous per people, right? Example. Lastly, this example is very important. That means where do we see this in real life in the very first place? Example, you can bring like celebrities or like, often like struggling with mental health because their lives are constantly being watched online, right? That means they become more pretentious over online and they are pushing their mental health is being deteriorated because they now pretend more over like choosing like becoming a real person they are. What usually people do mistakes in THBT motions are turning the debate entirely into a policy motion, right? That means people come up and say that as a government that we will create a government department which will probably like do the betterment, ban social media. This is very bullshit when you talk about THBT motions, right? That means THBT motions usually do not need any sort of policies, right? Also, giving only opinions or one-liners without any reasoning. That means you must have to explain why something is true or how it is affecting people in the very first place, right? And why it matters over anything. Also, you must be forgetting how to draw comparisons in the debate. That means you must show why your side is better than the other side. You have to do this by your government's second or third speech, or from the op side as well, second or third speech. You have to draw a comparison. Otherwise, the entire point of THBT motion becomes null and void. Using unrealistic example, do not bring any sort of like examples you have seen on movies or stories or books, novels, etc. Try to bring more believable, relatable, or relevant examples. So let me just, before I conclude or summarize everything, any doubt from the offside or the keyword metrics of building good argument and etc. uh, you can ask. If not, I'll just proceed with, just react if you have understood. Okay, all good. Yeah, let me just proceed with a conclusion of this entire debate, entire motion burden analysis. Like, what does this understanding comes to? In a THPT debate, government is asking why should the society accept this belief, while the opposition is saying that why should society reject this belief, right? Uh, Both teams are fighting over like ideas, values, and ways of thinking. The winner is the side that is proving the better that their world is more reasonable, more beneficial, and more convincing, right? Government is simply, just remember when you see a THBT motion, when the motions are like you see a THBT motion, if you're a golf side, just remember you have to prove that this belief is correct and beneficial to the stakeholders. And as the opposition, just remember that this belief is flawed and harmful. You have to prove this. Your burden stands out, right? uh, I have done. भाई बहुत जल्दी खत्म हो गया. Any doubts? You are open to ask doubts regarding this motion, not only this motion, anything regarding debate and Vivaad, etc. I'll start a lot. किसी को भी कुछ भी डाउट हो, हाँ जी पूछो अंजेस्टा.
Yeah, I had one doubt. Like, just now you mentioned the point where, like, this THBT motion becomes null and void. Like, when does it become null and void? When does a case become null and void? That was the
Oh,
point where I could not like understand
okay,
that
okay.
how do we formulate our like policy and everything.
See, for a THBT motion, your entire burden is like probably